Good morning. This is the first video for the plays from the key position in Meyer. Meyer says specifically that although this position looks a little weak, it can kind of counter a lot of plays with very little force. And it's really because it's setting you up with some good structure, and we're going to see that it's coming out to long point. And the technique he gives us in this first play is important, but what makes this important is that he's echoing one of his massively important tactical pieces of advice that we see over and over and over again, which is to provoke the opponent to come from one position and then hit them where they just came from. So let me read you the play and then we'll talk about it a little bit. In the onset, position yourself in this guard in much the same way as you have fought previously in the unicorn. If your opponent then positions himself to the right or left in one of the high or low postures, then thrust straight in from you at his face from the key into long point. He must fend off this thrust if he does not wish to be hit. From whatever side he strikes you out, then deliberately let your blade go around your head the way that he has sent with his stroke and cut in at him to the same side from which he has struck you out. But if he slips after you, then you should not hit, but let it flit to another opening and cut away from him to another opening before he realizes it. So, the key position, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of a mid-height transition between, I like to think of it as between ox and plow. So if I'm in my ox position and I relax my arms, I've ended up in the key. Another way you can think of it is if you can go from the ox down into the plow, and if you kind of bring it in halfway and think about flexing in between these two positions, if you're kind of stuck in that, caught in that middle section, you're in the key. So he says it looks weak, but because we can extend out into long point, we end up with a very good structural position. Our skeleton's in a good spot. So we can counter a lot of plays with very little force. He says like a key can undo a big old lock. So the play itself is from here, we're going to extend out into long point and threaten our opponent's face. If they parry the sword, they strike it out. Wherever they came from is where we're going to cut around to attack. So if my opponent's sword is on their right, and I extend and threaten them with this long point to the face, and they knock my sword to the side, I'm just going to let it roll around and hit to where they just came from. If they're on the other side, and I'm thrusting out to long point, and they knock it this way, again, I'm going to let it roll around and hit to where they just came from. And Meyer repeats this advice over and over and over again. You provoke your opponent to get them to move and then hit them where they just came from. And then he says, if they do manage to recover and come back, just pull that cut and come back around. So the mental shorthand for this is pretty short. Key, thrust, hit to one side, or key, thrust, hit to the other side. So when I'm practicing this on the lapel, pretty simple. From this key position, I'm gonna start this unwinding into long point first, and then my body's gonna follow, and then I hit to one side. I'm gonna start this unwinding again with my body first, and then practice hitting to the other side. And then he says, if they parry that, you go to the next one. So what I will practice there is from key, I will hit and pull, then from key, hit and pull. So you're just practicing hitting your opponent where they came from, or if they recover and start to try to follow you, bring it back around to that other side. So you're again hitting them where they just came from. And then just because we want to practice being responsible, if I do my key and hit, make sure that you leave again probably with the cut, where I key, hit, double hit, come back around. So the key, no pun intended, is from here. We're extending out into the long point position. So I want to make sure that I have good structure. I'm going to follow, and if they hit me around, sit where they came from, and if they are coming back, hit them on the other side where they were coming from. Because if I've knocked the sword this way, and now I'm kind of panic blocking this way, I've come from my right, and so this is, my right is being threatened, and then I have to turn and come from my left, and now I'm getting hit on the left. So we're always hitting the opponent where they're coming from, which is a harder opening to recover from. So I see the glare is kicking in on the camera, so go ahead and give this a shot, and let me know if you have any questions, and we'll